YouTube, what's the deal? It's your girl Jahira, and I am back. What's up, y'all? I'm losing a strap here. Um, I'm just getting back from the store, so don't mind me. But I wanted to talk to y'all about something. And this is, I don't even know if I should qualify what I was about to say. I'm not going to. It's a funny thing growing up. Just the whole process and the reflection and the looking back on where you ended up from where you started. It's just funny. It's just an odd thing. You know, I know I'm not the only one out here, but I've always had this tendency to kind of memorialize people whose lives have crossed my path in my mind, and I remember them the way that they were, whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing. And people change. And that's a very cliche statement to make, but they really do. And I think I'm kind of learning the lesson that I am not the only person in the history of my life who's undergone a metamorphosis, if you will. Granted, mine could be considered more extreme than others because mine included the physical, but I'm not alone here. And the reason why all of this is coming up is because this year I have reconnected with a number, and I mean a really ridiculous, like crazy number of people from my past. And I specifically refer to, some of my early high school slash middle school years. Prior to all that you see before you today. And most of those experiences, I would say like 99.5% of those experiences have been really good. What tends to happen is I will reach out to somebody that I knew from back then and reintroduce myself and then they'll tell other friends or other friends of theirs that may have known me as well, like, oh my god, you've got to see this. And those people will reach out to me, and again, by and large, it's been a great experience. The reactions have been, for the most part, positive. But there's this one in particular that I want to talk to y'all about tonight because it's really taught me a powerful lesson. I'm sorry, it's nighttime over here, so that's why I'm saying tonight. Um, I went to school with a guy by the name of Mike. And Mike was, now again, I went to this school, and this is the school that I'll be talking about in a later video. I went there prior to my transition. I actually arrived at that school at the age of 14. And so the only frame of reference I had to my own life at that point was or the only thing I knew to identify myself was based on my attraction to guys. And so I considered myself at that point to be gay and came out 2 years prior to this incident, as gay, or 2 years prior to attending that school. So I was out as a gay individual. And it was a very difficult time in my life. Because first of all, I knew that I wasn't gay. But that was the closest approximation to who I knew myself to be at such a young age, that's what I had to go with. And even though, and although I did know that I wasn't gay, like, even coming out as gay, it didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like it didn't solve anything. It didn't completely encompass the totality of my being. But again, within the limited scope of my experience, that's what I That was the best way to describe where I was at in my life at that time. And this school was ultra conservative. They had never had an openly gay person, to the best of my knowledge. I mean, you know, based on, and I'm talking real educated guess here, they had never had somebody like me who was not questioning, who was not, apologetic or down low or in any way in the closet at all. I was just very upfront about that assertion. So when it comes from, the staff and the faculty being somewhat unaccepting, more than somewhat unaccepting, some of them were out and out unaccepting of who I was, and then you have a bunch of rowdy kids in the middle of puberty, you can imagine how difficult it was. And Mike, y'all, Mike was horrible. I'm sorry. And Mike, I know you're watching this, but I have to be honest. Mike was so mean to me. Y'all, it was the worst. I couldn't chew gum without being called a faggot. I promise you I couldn't. It was just like, he was incredibly popular. And he had like a whole, circle of the cool kids. And I, shortly prior to attending that school, I'm sorry, I'm like sitting on my hair. Well, I'm sitting on somebody's hair, which is now mine. Anyway, prior to attending that school, I had actually injured my knee. And so I was using a cane. So if you can imagine, like, walking around this campus, hobbling on my cane, this like openly gay kid, I can see what it might have looked like from the outside. But Mike made me cry. Like, I would sit in my room and just cry. People were, and it wasn't just Mike. Please don't get me wrong. Everybody, the majority of people. For very obvious reasons, I gravitated towards the girls. And the girls loved me. Girls loved me. And that's kind of always been the case with me. But just the guys, like, I was so out of the box that they didn't know how to respond to me. And they were not nice. They really weren't nice. And Mike was bad. And I say all this to illustrate the point that through some of our mutual friends, I found Mike on Facebook. And I was very hesitant to reach out to him because, again, emblazoned in my memory is this guy who was just vicious to me. But I kind of, just grabbed my boobs and said, be a grown-ass woman and say something. And he wrote back, and I did say something. He wrote back. He did not know who I was. And it took me having to give him some context clues, as in my last name, and letting him know that we used to be in the same dorm together and everything like that before he finally figured out who I was. And I wish to God that I had been a fly on the wall of whatever room he was in when he got it all together and realized that he was speaking to, the child. But Mike shocked the hell out of me. Because Mike has not only been incredibly kind and just super supportive and encouraging, Mike has actually become a friend. And Mike is now a subtastic who watches my videos. You cannot understand how surreal all of this is for me. Because those years that I spent at that school, in that environment, the years leading up to my transition, above and beyond anything else, because especially, when puberty was involved as well, those years were the hardest that I have ever experienced in my life. The hardest years of my life was 14 to turning 17. The hardest, bar none. It was not a day go by that I did not think of ending my life. It was not a day to go by that I did not wonder if I was schizophrenic or had multiple personality disorder, because I could not shake this conviction that I was always a woman. It was the first I know this much is true moment in my life, was that I was a girl. And if you can imagine, from 3 years old of knowing that to now I'm 16 and I still know that, you question your own sanity. You do. I mean, we're talking about the 80s and the 90s here. I came into that school in 1993. The level of general knowledge that we see today was absolutely not in place back then. So they didn't know how to deal with me, and I didn't know how to deal with myself. But getting back to the current issue at hand, it just amazes me. Mike is happily married with two of the most beautiful daughters I've ever seen in my life. But to go from a place of just utter rejection to a place of not just accepting me, but seemingly embracing me, it is amazing to me the change that can occur in people if given enough time and life experience. And I really didn't appreciate that change in other people prior to this incident, prior to this current state of being that I share with somebody that I've known for upwards of 20 years. And it's just, it fascinates me. And it's really kind of revitalized my belief in the human spirit, and speaks volumes about the capacity that we as humans have to change and to embrace the unknown. And I'm really grateful to have a Mike in my life. I really am. I've been taught a very powerful lesson, and when I learn something, I have no choice but to teach it to someone else. So I hope that y'all got something out of this. And I'm in a very happy place. And I have Mike to thank for that. So with that being said, y'all, I'm out of here. And I wish you all the very best until we meet again. And as usual, one love. Thank you, Mike.